Hello, everybody. I'm Mel Albin. I want to welcome you to the Source Radio Network Jazz Confusion Power Hour. Each week, and we've been doing this for a couple of years now, we have a guest artist, and we've had a wonderful artists on this show. We've had Billy Ocean, Annie Lennox, Brian Culbertson, Mesa, Pieces of a Dream. I can go on and on. Jeff Bradshaw, Jay Brown. We have a list of Grammy winners and Billboard top artists regularly. And the purpose of this show is for you to get to know the artist. I want to go behind the mind. I want to know what makes this artist tick. How do they come to their music? How do they bring their music to you? What do they go through in the creative process? So you'll learn a lot more about each artist. So when you go to see them, you'll know them up front and personal, much closer, and you'll have a better understanding of all the work they put in to bring you music that you love. So tonight we have a very special guest. Her name is Ronya-Lee Anderson, and Ronya is multi-talented, and she works in dance and in song. And I think you're going to find this extremely interesting to see how she brought these two together. And her music is really delightful, and it spans a range of different genres, which we'll talk about also. So without any further ado, let me bring on our special guest. Ronya, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. No complaints.
Good, good. Okay. I was just telling our audience a little bit about the fact that you're multi-versatile, that you do dance as well as do music, and you combine them also into an interesting product, I guess I'll call it for now. But it's very unique, and it's very entertaining. So I'd like to start off by asking all the guests to first tell our listeners and any fans that may be listening in, tell them something about what you're up to these days. What are you doing? What are you working on? Any concerts coming up?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be a part of the lineage of all of the wonderful folks that you've talked to in the past. In terms of what I'm working on now, it's a interactive choreo sonic, so choreography and then also live music sonic journey that explores fear and love, that are some of the kind of preeminent themes of the songs that I've written in this particular collection. And I call it the Light Sessions. It's going to premiere April 1st and 2nd at the Dance Place in Washington, D.C. It is a venue that kind of started off primarily in dance, but has opened up for more theatrical work and multidisciplinary work. So that's kind of what I'm in the throes of right now. It's 2 weeks away.
That sounds really fascinating. I'm just curious about the interactive portion between dance and music. How do you bring these two together when you perform?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. I mean, so there's sort of what I think most people might have in their minds of like, okay, the person is singing, so I'm up front singing, and then there are what we call backup dancers. So that happens sometimes, but there are also moments where there might be a movement section that leads us into a song. Yeah. So there's a song, Light, for instance, that is really about looking towards a better future. So like, oh, I can't see whether or not things are going to be better today, but I can feel that if I keep pressing on, things will get better. And when I do that song live, before I go into the song, there's a movement sequence that myself and dancers kind of engage in. I don't want to give it away, but we do a movement sequence that involves fruit, like citrus fruit, that the audience can like smell and see, and the audience can eat this fruit too, before we kind of go into the piece. So really trying to engage people's senses and also trying to be the full person. So not just through the voice, but also through the whole body in the space.
Oh, that's fascinating. I see you'd like to combine things in unique ways. You mentioned, fear and love.
Mm.
How are those two related?
Yeah, so there is a track, and forgive me for not remembering exactly the name of the track at the moment,
That's all right.
but on one of Erykah Badu's many fabulous albums, there's just this moment where she talks about fear and love being like primary emotions. And that's always sat with me like, well, what about all the other emotions? And the more I sat with it, the more I began to think about how so much of everyday life is really driven by love or fear. So maybe love of another person, love of self, love of life itself, but then also fear. Like when we're trying something new, there's fear. When we're meeting new people, there's fear. And so, my songs kind of cover a wide range of topics, but if I had to distill it, I think they are situated in fear and love.
Yeah, that's interesting. My initial thought when you mentioned it was some people fear love and other people love to fear.
Oh, there's that
you know, they can't get away from it. They're all auto terrorized.
too.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, look, this is a good place to start because what I want to find out is how did you get to be so multi-talented? What was the beginning? What was your family like when you were a child? Was there music in your house, or tell us
Yeah.
a little about that?
Yeah, so my family is from the West Indies, specifically from Jamaica or Jamaica, a place that many people are probably familiar with. Bob Marley, weed, good weather, blue water, all things. And so you know, I say that to say that I think one of the ways that my family, as an immigrant family, was able to stay connected to their roots and was able to make sense of being in a new country was to find other people from their island and from the Caribbean more broadly. And so once they found those people, they then gathered with those people. So almost weekly, we would have like basement or bashment parties where my parents would cook lots and lots of food. There would be lots and lots of alcohol, and there would be lots and lots of music and lots of dancing. And so as a child, I mean, that was Saturday night. Saturday night was that type of experience. And then they would put us to bed, and I remember you go to bed, you could still feel like the bass from the basement, like pumping. You could still feel it like in your body as you're trying to
Yeah.
fall asleep. And then, of course, we went to church on Sunday morning. And so, having that Saturday night experience and then kind of the Sunday morning church choir experience, my mom worked with the youth choir and, did piano and voice lessons for students.
Oh,
So there
okay.
was always that happening at church. And then in the afternoons, there would be a lot of gathering around the piano and messing around, playing and singing and performing kind of thing.
So, what did you do first? Did you dance or sing?
Oh, wow, that's great. Well, if you ask my mom, she'll say that I was singing first. I was dancing first. No, no, dancing, because she has the story of me being like 6 months old and moving to music, I think was her
Wow.
signal that I wanted to dance. Um, but I think, dance was there. And then I would say, singing was it was happening almost simultaneously, I would say.
So, tell me a little bit more about the church experience.
Mhm.
What did you participate in the choir, or what did you do?
Yeah, so at first, my parents were they'll hate that I said this, but they were too tired after the Saturday night parties to go to church. So, there was a bus that would pick myself up and my brother and take us to Sunday school and church. And to be honest, it didn't matter to me much, like, what we were talking about. All I knew is that when you went to church, you got to sing. And then I danced outside of church. So I was doing sort of the run of the mill ballet, jazz, and modern at your local studio. And the pastor's wife said to me, "Hey, you dance. Can you start a dance group at the church?" And so then it just became choir and dance and choir. And I spent a lot of my childhood in that space making stuff.
Oh, so okay, so it started really early on. How old were you then when you
I
were?
think I was probably like 11, 12, like fifth or
Wow.
sixth grade when she, yeah, yeah.
What were you doing in school at the time? Were you bringing all your talent to school too?
Yeah, I mean, of course, musicals, that was a big thing because I think at the time that was really the track that you would think of. If you were a singer, dancer, actress, like if you did those three things, then you go to Broadway. I mean, like that was that's what
Right.
people thought, right? And so while I was in school, definitely was spending a lot of time in choir, like every chorale or every singing group that they had, I was a part of, and then being really involved in the musicals at school as well. And I wanted to be involved in any way I could. So like if I didn't get cast for a show, I would volunteer to help with costumes or I would volunteer to do makeup, because I really just wanted to be in that space.
That's wonderful. Did you play any instruments?
I do. I play the ukulele in public. I play the piano in private and the acoustic guitar in private to work through songs. So I write a lot of my songs on acoustic guitar or sometimes on the keyboards.
Okay, how did you come to a ukulele? That is an unusual instrument for most people.
It is. Yeah, actually, this is a fun story because it is very random. So, long story short, I was at an event, a dance event, and I was choreographing a work, setting a work with some folks, and I was there for 2 weeks, and I thought I was going to have a very robust schedule. And when I got there, I realized that I was going to have a lot of free time on my hands. And so I thought to myself, why not check out that instrument store that's across the street and see if there's something that I can learn to play with all these hours that I have in my hotel room? And a ukulele was easy to transport. Like it was going to be easy to take it on the plane. And that 2 weeks, I had like a deep dive and really fell in love with the instrument.
Yeah, but a violin or a flute is also easy to transport. What was
That's
it about the ukulele?
That's true. I mean, I will say that probably at the time, price point for a violin was like not that was
So,
probably not the instrument for me at the time.
so let me understand this. You chose an instrument based on size and price.
I did. I did. Wait, can we go back? Can we erase that? But yeah, I did. I did.
No, no, it's fine because this is part of what I think your fans and listeners will find so interesting. I think they think that people deliberately choose an instrument,
Yeah.
and so many of the guests I have on who play instruments would say, "Well, I started with a drum, then I went to the guitar, then I went to a trumpet, then I went to a bass." When they go to school and they want to play in the band, and the only instrument that no one's playing would
Right.
be a trombone. So
Yeah.
they become a trombone player. So it's not specifically a choice all the time, but it's interesting, how people who are talented find the instrument that they take through a journey through life. So
Yeah.
do you play your ukulele on your soundtracks?
I do. I mean, so here's the thing. I always write starting with the ukulele or guitar and piano, but ukulele finds its way in there. Um, and then sometimes it doesn't make its way into the track for one reason or another. So for instance, the latest track Runaway, when we got into like the last phase of production, it just felt like it didn't need the ukulele. And so we ended up taking it out, right? After we had spent lots of time trying to get it right, but we ended up taking it out. So it's there, but it doesn't always end up in the final recorded version.
We're going to get to that, the process of creating your music. That's another thing that always fascinates me. Every artist seems to have a different way of doing it.
Mhm.
So, we'll talk about some more of these things. So let's talk about, okay, now you finished public school or now you're going to college. Where did you go to college and what did you take up? I know you have two interests, theology and dance and music. So what did you do in college? Where were you progressing?
Yeah, so college, I'm just laughing because I went in as an English major. So I went in, and actually, No, that's not true. I went in as a political science major, because, there was a little bit of a stigma, like, well, what are you going to do with that? You need to you need to go and do something serious. So political science seemed serious. So I did political science. And after a semester of that, I was like, I don't want to do this. And so I ended up doing English and dance. And the dance department was very closely linked to the vocal performance and arts department as well. And so I took voice lessons, at the time. I dabbled in with the idea of becoming an opera singer and decided maybe not. But college, I ended up graduating with a degree in English and one in dance performance.
It sounds like you chose a major the same way you chose a ukulele.
A little bit, a little bit, a little bit.
Yeah.
I know, crazy.
Yeah, well, that's great. Because, what it shows is you're not afraid to try something and shift into something else if it feels better. You
Yeah,
know, that's an important thing for any artist. They don't get stale.
yeah,
They're willing to move between different genres and different instrumentation. I think it keeps your fans fresh. I mentioned before I had Brian Culbertson on, and you never know what's coming out of Brian next. I mean, there's no pattern to it, and that's what his fans love about him. There's always something original.
nice.
So I think the way you approach life is the same way you approach your music. It's just
Yeah,
a little bit of everything, and it's emergent. It's not predetermined. It's emergent all the time. So
yeah,
yeah, and that makes you unique in many ways as an artist.
yeah. I
So
receive that. Thanks. Yeah.
yeah. So okay. So now you're in college. When did you make your first recording
Yeah.
and even your first professional dance performance? When did those two occur?
Oh, wow. So I remember, I can't remember specifically the first professional dance experience. I do know that I had done some work, like musical theater work at Arena Stage when I was in like high school. So I did some work like that. In terms of me as a soloist, a vocalist, I I was with a record company for a little bit at between 14 and like 17. Very young, probably too young. And so I did some recordings, and at the time I was writing lots of music, but I wasn't sharing it as much, right? So I was singing a lot of other people's music. So things other people had written for me was what I was recording at the time, and just a little bit of my stuff, but still really tentative.
Okay. And so, um, okay, after you went to college, you went to graduate school.
Yes.
And what did you choose for your major in graduate school?
Oh, yeah, so that's tricky. I had a little stint. So in between college and grad school, I was in a musical, Children of Eden. So I was in that
Okay.
for a while. We were in New York, we were in DC at the Ford's Theater, and that was a lovely experience. And I think at the time I had also considered studying theology because I was really interested in trying to find my own creative spiritual practice. So not rooted in a religion, but trying to find my own spiritual creative practice. And at the time, going to study theology seemed like a good idea. So I went to Duke University and I studied theology there and was trying to find ways to weave that into my songwriting process and into my process of dance making too.
Okay, let me just backtrack a little bit. In between college and graduate school, you said you started performing and you were at the Ford Theater. What were you doing with it in that repertoire? Were you dancing, singing, both? What were you doing?
It was singing, dancing, acting. Yeah.
Oh, all three.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Triple threat.
It was like musical theater. It was, that was that kind of thing.
Oh,
Yeah.
terrific. Okay. And you did that for 3 years? Is that
No, I did that for we rehearsed, we did the show, it got extended. I would say almost 2 years, a little under
okay?
2 years. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So you finished theology, but you have a second degree, don't you? Besides, Theology?
I have a degree in dance, a master's of fine arts in dance. I say dance in air quotes because it's really performance studies. But yeah,
And where did you do that? At Duke also?
no, I came back. I did that at University of Maryland, College Park.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I taught there for a while.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's a great school.
Yeah.
So, okay, so how old were you now? When I'm trying to get a fix on this. When you went to Duke and you went to University of Maryland, how old were you then?
Oh, sure. So when I went to Duke, University of Maryland, um, I was late 20s. Wasn't long.
Okay,
It wasn't. It wasn't. It was a little bit later because, like I said, between undergraduate and graduate school, I did some performing, which I
right.
think is always a good idea. I don't think it's ever a good idea to just go straight through school. I think you definitely want to be out there doing the work as well.
No, that makes a lot of sense, especially especially if you had already experienced working in theater and
Mhm.
already experienced art, doing a dance and music. There's really a degree in theology and a degree in fine arts is a nice to have if you want to teach. Um,
Yeah.
but you already had the goods, you already had the talent. Did you find that going to your MFA at Maryland enhanced your dance repertoire or your musical skills?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely didn't enhance it doesn't it's not my skills, right? Like, it doesn't enhance my skills, but I think it gives you a pause. It's a little bit of a pause to create. So I was awarded a fellowship, so it was fully funded. So essentially, you have this period in life, couple years where you can learn by doing. You can learn by processing, making work. I did a lot of teaching as well, and I always feel like I learn from teaching. I mean, I think you know something better when you can teach it to other people and your process
Yeah.
is clearer when you can invite people into the process. So in that sense, yeah, I definitely think I built more skills. Yeah.
That's terrific. That's great. I'm curious too. We didn't really talk about this very much, but what were some of your early musical influences? And are they consistent, or did you pick up new influences as you went along?
Yeah. So I grew up listening to a lot of, yeah, it's all over the place. A lot of country, country music.
Country. Okay.
And then also really, really loved Bob Marley coming up.
Sure.
I think though, in terms of like as I was styling myself as a singer, for instance, when I was young, right? Because I did a lot of singing at weddings and bar mitzvahs and events here and there. That was sort of what it was like for me to be in high school. I was always doing that. And so I was listening to Mariah Carey and Lauryn Hill and Whitney Houston. um, and then as I got older, I was listening to Erica Badu. I love Etta James. Uh,
Oh yeah, yeah,
Nina Simone, all of that
yeah.
feeling and that angst. So it has shifted over time, but it's more like adding. It's not that I leave these other ones. I just keep adding to the.
Yeah, it's an eclectic mix because the first three people you mentioned are kind of pop, and then
Yeah.
you get to talk about Erica Badu, which is not pop
No.
at all. And what's again, you seem to move very comfortably, within different art forms and different genres. It just seems natural for you. You mentioned Etta James. Everybody knows At Last from Etta James,
Mhm.
but her song "I'd Rather Go Blind" I think is
Uh,
one of the great songs ever recorded. You know,
yes.
and and
Yeah.
and she's such a strong woman, and the women that you chose, by the way, are all when you think about Nina Simone, these are really strong women.
Mhm.
And Erica Badu, even though she's had a little some issues here and there,
Don't we
she
all?
yeah, she goes on. She persists, and she's wonderful. So you really pick the musical influence you're talking about are just classic, and I can see that now when you're talking about that. When I listen to your music, I can see where some of that is coming from now.
Yeah.
So that's really a good insight. Have your musical influences changed over the years? Have you adapted new people? And that you
Yeah, I mean, I'm always discovering new people. I love Brittany Howard, of course,
Okay.
and Valerie June is a favorite of mine. So yeah, I mean, I'm always discovering new people as I've continued working and making work. There are other people who I maybe wasn't as aware of beforehand, and now I am. So Bjork, for instance, as I got more into singing and songwriting, like, oh wow, I really appreciate artists, and Bjork is one of them, who are able to create, a multi-dimensional experience, which is, what I'm interested in. Beyond the song, how are there other ways for the audience to engage?
That's fascinating. Yeah, and that's what is going to make that's what makes you so unique because it's not just about your music; it's about an experience that you're
Mhm.
trying to bring to your audience that transcends just music, as a
Yeah.
discipline. So, some of the things you're talking about are very unique when I think about other artists I've had on the show.
Mm.
So, you know, one of the things I really want to try to figure out with you a little bit more is trying to situate your music within the current music industry. Obviously,
Yeah.
one of the things that's happened in the last several years, music has become somewhat narrowed on radio. There
Mm.
used to be so many jazz stations and then so many rock stations and so many blues stations, and now most of it is urban
Mm.
and you're bringing a different experience. So how do you see yourself or situate yourself as you move forward? To build a fan base and build an audience. You
Yeah.
seem to be. Do you think you're running against the grain, or you think things are changing in the music industry and it's moving in a new direction? How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly still figuring it out because I think you're right. I mean, there's always that question, like, pick a genre,
Yeah.
pick a space, pick a lane. And so, what I found, at least in the last three works that I've released, is that in some respects, they all live in different lanes. And so, figuring out what that means moving forward. So, I'm still working on that, to be quite frank. I think that what I am hopeful about is that the more I have live performances and the more people are able to have the experience, the more that I'll be able to not worry so much about a genre. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And I'm thinking, for example, festivals. If you wanted to be in a festival, where
Yeah.
would they usually dance or music. But so if you want to be in a festival, can you think of any festivals that you'd like to be in at some point?
Oh, wow, that's a great question.
Well, look, I'm not trying to stump you
Yeah,
here, but I don't know. Maybe if you thought about it,
yeah. I mean, to be honest, I probably should think about that some more. Um, but I mean, they're all like there's Afropunk, there's Coachella,
yeah,
there's Lollapalooza. I mean, there
we
I'd like to
Capital,
be at all of
Capital,
those.
yeah, Capital
Those are
Jazz
big ones.
Fest, right? Capital Jazz Fest, right in your hometown,
Yeah.
DC.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so these are big ones. I'd love to be a part of all of those. And I do think I see more and more experimentation. I mean, usually it happens a little bit later. So I think often the artist will sort of come out in a lane and then make the detour.
yeah.
um, so I think there's the appetite for it. It's just a matter of having the opportunity for people to experience it and then go, oh, I see.
Yeah, I think you're right. I also think that audiences are really looking for something different from what they're allowed to hear and what the radio stations will allow them to hear.
Yeah.
I think when I think about young artists like John Batiste,
Mm,
who samples all the old school
mhm.
and brings it to young people in a hip hop format sometimes, or Bruno Mars. There are these younger artists that are trying to create some new space,
Yeah.
and I think there's an appetite for it. I think people are kind of bored with a lot of the music that they get on radio all the time.
Yeah.
So I think there's space for you. You have to figure out where that space is.
Right, right.
Yeah, that,
Move quickly into the next lane. Yeah.
yeah, it used to be record labels would do this for you. They had A&R, they would build your brand. They would put you out with artists, and to open for them on the road. So they kind of were career makers, and now you got to figure it out on your own, and it's not easy.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
it's something that confronts a lot of indie artists these days. It's a lot of work.
It is.
So let me play some of your music
Yeah.
for everybody. Let me just pull this up. 1 second. I think we'll start off with More.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Why don't you, after we play the music, then you can tell people about it. 'Cause I know Light
Okay.
and More came out simultaneously, two of your songs. And then after that, after we play More, we'll play your recent song, Runaway. And
Okay.
you can talk a little bit about that. So let's just play one of your songs for everybody and let them get a good feel for your music.
Cool.
Told me to stay away, but I can't shake this feeling. Got me hooked on love, the high of love. I don't wanna come down. Warning, danger, likely to get hurt. Cause of death, broken heart, guilt softly. This ain't my first. I keep on coming back for more. Though my knees are weak and my heart is sore. No, not this time, never again. Love somehow cries away in. Maybe it's a blessing. Told me to guard my heart. I could win or I could lose some. I'll never know if I refuse to try. So I'm jumping in. Once bitten, twice shy. My heart must be one of a kind. 'Cause so love bit me, kicked me, cheated me. I still return. I keep on coming back for more. Though my knees are weak and my heart is sore. No, not this time, never again. Love somehow rise away in. Maybe it's a blessing. Keep on coming back for more. Though my knees are weak and my heart is sore. No, not this time, never again. Love somehow rise away in. Maybe it's a blessing. What makes me weak, brings me to my knees. Baby, please knock me off my feet. What wanted danger, cause of death, broken heart, softly, so I'm jumping in. What keep on coming back for more, though I know I will die. Love, 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 I keep coming back for more.
Fascinating. Love it. You know, I hear some Erica Badu influences in that song for sure. You know, so tell us about how you composed it. You know, what you were aiming for, and describe the process a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So, at the time I was working with an artist, or more a producer. He did some work early on, but has mainly been producing, Coco Boom. And he was playing with that little bass, that little ding, 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 and I was like, well, what are you going to do with that? He said, I don't know. He got some ideas. And so that's where that started. And I've always felt like this song is it's sort of a laid back kind of energy, but then there's like this angst. So like it's rock ballady. It's a little angsty. And honestly, the words just kind of came, this idea of like coming back for more. So like coming back for this, this isn't working. It's bad. And you keep coming back to this bad situation. And then starting to think like, more abstractly or theoretically, without going too far, but, playing a little bit with the idea of like being bruised and harmed and abused in love, and then still calculating, okay, that was really bad, but I'm going to try again. So yeah, when I think about the words, I'm like, oh, but yeah.
Well, there's your fear and love again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, pops right up. Were those your band members playing in the studio?
Yeah. So at the time I was working with Coco Boom, so he did that, that riff that happens, and then there is also that guitar solo at the end. Greg Gavin was an artist that I was working with at the time. And so, yeah, they were in the studio together, kind of working that out. And, it was one of those like kind of back and forth processes. Let's try this. Oh, no, let's try that. Interestingly enough, you have not the radio edit, but the longer version that I sent you. And so there's a whole middle section that I haven't heard in a bit. That is
really?
Okay. Like the bridge.
Okay.
We calculated, let's take that out, but I did enjoy hearing it again.
Oh, okay. So I mean, that's one of the questions we kind of briefly discussed before you came on.
Yeah.
My interest is always, how does an artist know when the song is finished?
So
yeah. Here you had a longer version and took out the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you decide on that? And is it your decision, or is it the engineer, or who makes this decision?
Yeah. So ultimately, I make the decision. I try to be very, but I do try to lean on people who I'm working with, because I also try to be really intentional about who I'm working with. And I know that when you're really, when you're married to a song, like when you've been spending a lot of time with it, you sometimes want to hold on to parts of it. And so it's very helpful to have other people go, I know you love that section. I think that section is great too. And maybe you can do that live, but let's just hear a version of it without that. Yeah. So I'm making the decision. And ultimately when I heard, I think it was definitely Coco Boom who suggested it. Like, maybe we take out that middle section. And we determined that after we had done, I think it was like a live, maybe it was a live radio situation for WPFW. And I think like hearing it in context there was like, it does feel like it's a little long. And so we shortened it a bit.
Yeah. The reason this fascinates me, I've heard an interview with Bruce Springsteen, and he will spend a year on one song.
Oh, wow.
He just doesn't want to let go ever until he's 100% beyond the shadow of a doubt. It's exactly what he wants.
Yeah.
And so there's so many different ways to approach a song. It doesn't make the song any better necessarily, spending
Yeah.
a year or spending a week. But it's every artist just approaches that music differently and what they
Yeah.
expect at the end. So here you listen to the song, you had a long version, you just cut out the bridge, cut out the middle part.
Yeah.
So yeah, well, that's great. Let's listen to another song. And
Okay.
this one is a little quite a bit different in my mind. And
Okay. I can see that.
yeah. So this one's called Runaway, and this is your more recent release,
Yeah.
right? Okay, so let's play it, and we'll talk about it.
Cool, cool.
Right.
I got two tickets in my pocket. I say that we should fly away. No one is gonna stop us. What do you say? We'll never know until we try. Here on the ground, but we could touch the sky. The only people who could stop us are you and I. So take a chance and go with me. There's so much more we could be. What are you waiting for? Run away. Run away with me. We've done an awful lot of talking. We both know what we want. 10,000 reasons we should do this. It's live or die. I see us walking hand in hand. Explore each other in some far off land. It's not a dream 'cause I can taste it. It feels just right. So take a chance and go with me. There's so much more we could be. What are you waiting for? Maybe just take a chance and go with me. There's so much more we could be. What are you waiting for? I think we should just do this, right? Now, we both want to. Run away Run away I got you one-way tickets in my pocket, and I want you to go away with me. Come on, what are you waiting for? I got you one-way tickets in my pocket, and I want you to go away with me. We gonna do this or what? Want you to go away with me. Want you to go away with me. Want you to go
That's wonderful. I love the groove, and the orchestration is excellent.
Uh-oh. Did I
I
lose
lost
my? I'm
I
still
lost you
here. I think you just lost my light for a second. Uh-oh.
yeah.
Let's fix that.
Okay. These things happen.
Yeah, sorry about that.
That's okay. No big deal.
It's not as great, but oh, there we go. It's a little bit
That's
better.
fine.
I think it was like, ooh, I've timed out.
This is what live radio is about. especially broadcast and streaming video too. So these things are going to happen. That's fine. So anyway, I was saying that the orchestration is great, and it's just so different from your other song. So why
Yeah.
don't you tell us a little bit about Runaway?
Yeah, sure. So, I wrote Runaway on acoustic guitar some time ago. It's one of those songs I wrote, and then I'd never I had done sort of a scratch mix of it with a xylophone and some congas and like a very kind of in your basement production, and put it away for a little bit, and then pulled it back out when I wanted to expand my live performance repertoire. And so I started playing it on ukulele, and it really resonated with people. People would go, "Oh, I love that one. Can you play that one again?" Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Sure. um, and you know, that's why I kind of started bringing it back a bit more. And then when it was time to go into the studio, honestly, we had done 2 songs, and then it was like, well, we have time to do a third. And I said, let's try Runaway, let's just try it. And so that's kind of how it came to be recorded. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, if you remind me, Rod Stewart once talked about the song Maggie May, and he's doing his album, and the record label didn't want Maggie May. They said the song doesn't go anywhere, doesn't do anything, and he insisted, and that became his biggest hit.
That became the song. Yeah.
Yeah, he insisted on it. So it was an afterthought for just like let's do a third song. We have the time.
Yeah.
And, I think it's a spectacular song.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
like I said, the orchestration is great. You seem to be able to go 2 to 3 octaves. Your voice is really very, very good, and you're right on keys, very pleasing.
Thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about some places you've been performing?
Yeah, sure. So, things slowed down a little bit during COVID in some ways.
A little bit.
A little
Yeah.
bit. But I've done concerts at Eaton Hotel in DC,
Okay.
Kennedy Center, their Millennium Stage, as well as their Reach Space. I most recently opened for Dionne Warwick at the Clarice Smith Performing Arts Center, so that was fun. Singing her songs in front of her was a little daunting, but it was nice.
Yeah.
And then I've done like sort of how do I say, like smaller kind of outdoors types of concerts, and that sort of thing. Still working on performing more consistently, right? So for instance, I have this show coming up in April at Dance Place, and then I have a few sprinkles that are happening throughout the summer, but really want to find a venue and a space to be in residence, because I think that you learn so much from actually performing. That's where you learn connecting with the audience. Like you said, working out songs. I discovered what I discovered about Runaway in front of live audiences. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
it's really wonderful. There's so much about your performances that are so unique. The music is definitely unique in my mind. It doesn't fit any particular genre.
Yeah.
And that's a blessing and a curse sometimes, because you have the Capital Jazz Festival. They want jazz. And,
Yes.
yeah, and
Yes.
so but on the other side of it, you build a fan base around the uniqueness of your music and how it resonates with people. And I think Runaway is a great song. I think it has great legs. It should do very well.
Yeah.
Have you been getting airtime for the song? Do you know?
Yeah. Been getting some airtime. So really excited about that. And quite a few DJs have been picking it up and adding it to their live sets, as well as some of their internet radio stuff too. So,
well, we're going to add it to our list of songs. It will be
Great.
played on our station. and
Yeah.
I'll see if I can get it played on the BBC in the UK. I'll see if I can have them play it too,
Great. Yeah.
for you too, because the song is really, people should hear it. It's a
Thank
terrific
you.
track. Why don't you tell us a little bit? You started talking about it earlier,
Yeah.
about the choreosonic journey, exploring notions of fear and love. How did you decide that you wanted to integrate as a entertainer,
Mhm.
music and dance, because it's not done much unless you're talking about a musical. Otherwise, you
Sure.
don't see it as a performing art. You don't see it that often. So how did what made you not to choose one lane or the other, but to try to combine both? And what makes it unique in terms of the choreosonic approach that you're taking?
Sure. Yeah. So if I'm completely transparent, one of the reasons that I wanted to think about combining both is that it's exhausting to split yourself.
Okay.
So, it's really exhausting to like, oh, this is a dancer. Oh, wait, but over here, I'm not a singer songwriter. I'm only a singer songwriter over here. Um, and, you know, uh, more and more people would say to me, like, well, I love that you danced for this concert, but I know you can sing and you do songwriting. Like, why didn't we hear any of your songs? And then I would be in a singing songwriting context and someone would go, well, I know you're a fabulous dancer, like, but there wasn't any dance in this show. It's like, oh my gosh. So that's part of it, right? Is responding to, oh, people are potentially interested in seeing these things live in the same space, at least, right? And then in terms of the choreosonic journey and language, I'm I'm really interested in how the voice is an instrument. So I think, we understand that in terms of movement, that like you're using your body to move, but when you are setting up with a band, they'll say, okay, we have 5 musicians and a singer.
Right. Yeah.
Right? We have to mic 4 instruments and a vocalist.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, I think because I'm a dancer, I understand, and I'm not saying others don't, but I feel like I feel more acutely this sense that the same thing I'm using to move around in the space is the same instrument that I'm using to sing. And so I really want to think about how living in this body, you're able to do both, not always simultaneously, but how the two can inform each other. Like what can they say to each other? What can you learn from the two of them in conversation?
Do you do your own staging and your own music direction, or do you have a musical director as part of your band?
I do have a musical director as part of my band. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how do you integrate the dance? Do you do that part, or And what
I
about lighting and stage production? Do you get involved in that too?
Yeah, I have my hands in everything, but I do have people that I bring on because obviously they have the expertise in lighting design or sound design. But I might say I really want this section to feel, I want the audience to feel like this is surrounding them, like they're hearing the sound behind them, beside them, and in front of them, right? And that's when a sound designer makes that happen. And then bam, I want it to feel like
Yeah.
I'm singing right at them. Because I think that really, really matters. And that really affects how people experience the music.
Absolutely right. Engaging your audience from different directions is an interesting approach. To really get them on more than one level. Usually because dance and music, song performance is separate. You engage them on one level, but you're engaging them on multi levels, and it's a unique approach. Your music is really different and really interesting, and I'm really glad to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
It's wonderful. Is there anything else that you want to tell the audience about and that we may have not have covered? Anything about you or about where you're headed?
Yeah, I think we covered quite a bit. I have this performance coming up in 2 weeks. They should come out if they're in the area. And then also you should check out the music videos that I do have on YouTube. So you just look up Ronya-Lee.
Let me put
Yeah,
this up for you. You can
yeah,
tell everybody how they can hear your music and buy your music.
Yeah, if you go to YouTube, look for Ronya-Lee and the Light Factory, it'll come up right away. You'll see the music video for the song we just heard, or the song before, More. And then another song, a music video for that song as well, Light, which was an earlier release. And then coming down the pike, we are shooting the second week of April. So exciting. The music video for the song you just heard, Runaway. So that will be a smorgasbord of fashion and images and dance and like all of the things to get your senses going. And if you want to keep up with what I'm doing, Instagram is my main jam. All the things are there. All the links to how to purchase my music, stream the music, download it, etc. can be found there. Yeah.
Terrific. And if people want to get a hold of you to perform at a venue,
Yeah.
it's R&R Men Entertainment.
Yes. Yep. R&R
Terrific.
Entertainment. And you can reach out directly to that phone number. Text is best. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, look, I want to thank you so much, Ronya, for being on the show tonight and giving us your time. You know, it's a tremendously unique talent and perspective on music and dance. And, you know, I'm just really glad to have you on, and, you know, hope to have you back again in the future.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. You have a great night.
Thanks, you too.
Okay.
Take care.
Good night now.